All right. This video is inspired by an essay I was rereading by Isaac Deutscher called "The Ex-Communist Conscience," and this is about those ex-communists that have left the movement for whatever reason, and they can be found on all the different branches of communism and Marxism. If you're a Maoist, you have the new philosophers in France who at one time were Maoists and now are apologetists for imperialism and human rights, supposedly. If you are more Stalin inclined, you have people like Ignazio Salon, you have Andre Malraux, you have Arthur Kessler, who would come out of the various communist parties in whether the 20s, 30s, 40s, or whatnot, and broken with that and become apologetists for imperialism. And if you're a Trotskyist, you got people like Christopher Hitchens, James Burnham. Hitchens, who backs the invasion of Iraq. Burnham, who was a Trotskyist at one point, but thought Joseph McCarthy was okay, apartheid was good. And if you are a more New Left style Marxist, well, you got David Horowitz, who's a big time conservative. So all of these ex-communists, let's look at them. Because these are different than, say, someone who's just an anti-communist, but was really never in any form of the movement of any sort. And what they all left the movement, of course, and in its sense, and this is unfair, but it's crude, but I'm going to use this analogy. They're often inverted communists, as it were, and that will become clear as we go through this. And to those who say, look at these ex-communists and try and disparage their involvement, to be fair, like many of us who become involved in revolutionary politics, their ideals were probably very much the same. Sure, some of them were probably opportunists or whatnot, but a lot of them were motivated by ideals of social justice, the insecurity of capitalism brings, economic crisis, or the great ideals of Marxism and communism. And some, of course, have very intellectual conversions, and they see communism and Marxism as the fulfillment of hopes and dreams, as it undoubtedly is. And of course, through whatever means, and each one of these people would have a different story, they become disillusioned with Marxism and communism. But the truth is, it's not so much burnout. Like, we all maybe get tired of political activity, we need a vacation, we need a day off. That's understandable. These people just become totally disillusioned. And when they look back, when they look at Marxism or communism, and you could just read David Horowitz on this, they really lack any capacity for just detachment. They just see communism as this horror show, that is morally and intellectually bankrupt. And because, of course, because of their personal experience clouds it so much, there's really no detachment. It's just a horror show. And for them, communism, for these ex-communists, it isn't politics. It's just demonic. And you get that if you were to read, say, the collection called The God Who Failed, which is about these ex-communists who left the movement. And their experience as communists could almost be likened to post-traumatic stress disorder, or what they're experiencing after being communists is post-traumatic stress. And this morbid feeling you get if you were to read David Horowitz or James Burnham, whomever. And it's just irrational, a lot of it, when they discuss it. Like, this great conspiracy, people getting together in dark rooms, and, all of this. And this whole irrational feelings that come, it drives these people very far away from the movement, and for some of them, it drives them as far as fascism. And there were French communists in the 30s, one of whom, Jacques Dorat, I think, who ended up who was a member of the French Communist Party, and by the time he died in 1945, was an active Nazi. So there's an example for you. Now, some of these people, whether they break with Stalin, Trotsky, or Mao, we could go down the list. Sometimes they break with these people in the name of communism, in the name of some purified Marxism. And whatever you may think of that, they're still trying to stay within the confines of the movement, okay? Yet they tend to go much further. This disillusionment, this loss of hope, they essentially throw out the baby with the bathwater. Whatever criticisms they have of Stalin, they just essentially throw out the whole Marx, Lenin, and all of that, or the same would apply to Mao and Trotsky as well. And they claim, and often when you read these people, whether it's David Horowitz, Christopher Hitchens, James Burnham, go down the list, you will find a very similar refrain, that they claim to have made a profound discovery. And of course, this is given added credence in the media or academia, that the evil of communism isn't rooted in what Stalin or Mao or Trotsky or whoever did. No. It is rooted in Marx and the whole idea of human emancipation. They may not say human emancipation, but essentially that's what it is. And for the French new philosophers, they came up with Marx equals the Gulag. Okay, there we go. Or they see, so as communists, and they see the world in black and white. Yes, I realize my channel's in black and white, but I am willing to see various nuances in the world. But, capitalism is bad, of course, but there are nuances in the world. But in a sense, yes, communists do see the world. We see opposing forces, that's true. So the world is in black and white, okay. Well, these people, they simply reverse the colors. So black and white for them, as communists, is bourgeois bad, proletariat good. Well, suddenly, or bourgeois good, proletariat bad. Simplistic, but you get the idea. And before, they may have seen no difference between, say, liberalism and conservatism if you were a communist, or no substantial difference. Now, as an anti-communist and ex-communist, there's really no difference between communism and Nazism. That's if you're not a Nazi, or communism and liberalism. You get a lot of that if you, say, read David Horowitz. Now, they once believed communism to be infallible. Simplistic, but, the idea, essentially communism was the truth. Now they pretty much think that they are actually infallible for breaking with it. That their experiences give them such a profound insight that they're infallible, and anyone who dares to disagree, well, they're dupes, They don't understand the true nature of communism. And here's where perhaps you could just look at it to this point as these people as tragic scumbags, but tragic at this point. Well, most of these people, especially the ones I've named, they're becoming, as they move out of communism and into this ex-communist world, they essentially are prostituting themselves to state power. They're prostituting themselves to imperialism. To give some examples, James Burnham, Trotskyist, when he leaves the movement, he becomes influential with National Review, and at one point I believe he gets the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Sidney Hook, who was kind of an independent Marxist in the 30s, he was by the 1980s was backing U.S. policy in El Salvador. All those death squads and stuff. He really didn't have a problem with that. And he was, of course, looked on kindly by people like Ronald Reagan. Christopher Hitchens was backing George Bush's war, and he gets a lot of screen time because of it. And they're getting paid. They kind of know where the money is, as it were. Because to be a revolutionary is really not to get fame and wealth. It's not that type of profession, as it were. They denounce what they once believed. They condemn their comrades. In the 50s, they would name names, as it were, these ex-communists. And they support imperialism. They're supporting whether it's apartheid, Vietnam, U.S. policy in Central America, U.S. wars in the Middle East, U.S. subversion of wherever, or if they were in Britain, they would be doing the same. They would probably be backing British occupation of Northern Ireland or the British Empire. And they make a living almost from their lost faith. And these ex-communists that I've named, I don't like them. I don't respect them. And I actually did bother to read something in Christopher Hitchens. It's not impressive. They don't make a sense to retain any kind of critical sense or intellectual detachment. I've been through academia. I do have my convictions. You can see it pretty much whenever you view a video. I try when I can to have critical sense and intellectual detachment. These people generally don't. And I hope I've explained why. And if you're interested to read more, there is a source at the end of the video.